Hello, everyone, and welcome to XCMeducate's Expert Speaker Series, Project Management, Elevating Productivity in Your Organization. My name is Amy Silvestri, and I will be the host today. During this session, Mike Albrecht, PMP, Product Manager, will discuss how to apply basic project management methodologies to yield successful project outcomes. The webinar will then open up for Q&A. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about this webinar. XCM Solutions is registered with NASBA as a sponsor of continuing professional education on the National Registry of CPE Sponsors. As such, we are excited to offer one CPE credit for today's webinar. A total of 3 polls will be conducted throughout the presentation, and you will need to participate in all 3 polls in order to receive CPE credit. Your CPE certificate will be sent to the email you used to register for the webinar within 72 hours after the session. If you do not receive your certificate, please email us at xcmclientservices@xcmsolutions.com. Please note, CPE is not available when viewing the on-demand version of this webinar. If you experience difficulty answering the polling questions, please type your answer in the questions pane of the control panel, and we will ensure you receive credit for those questions. You will also have the opportunity to submit text questions by typing your question into the questions pane of the control panel. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session. If we don't get to your questions during today's webinar, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. A recording of this session will be sent out to you 24 hours after the close of the session. We will also post the recording and a copy of the PowerPoint on our Help Center. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mike.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming today. Excited to be here today to talk to you all about project management. Here's a little background about myself. I manage our corporate tax workflow, the tax and accounting workflow product as well. I have my master's in project management from Northeastern University. I have my PMP certification from the Project Management Institute. For all of you not familiar with that, again, I would always recommend people to look into getting their PMP certification. As we all worked in projectized organizations today, and really the foundational knowledge and tools and techniques, which we'll be talking about throughout the presentation today, are all come from the Project Management Institute's body of knowledge. All right, so today we're going to talk about why we need project management. We're going to look at some focus areas where we can improve our project management processes. We're then going to take a look at how we can apply those methodologies to yield successful project outcomes, and then we'll conclude with some things to remember. So just to ground you again in my background at XCM, I'm not here today for a sales pitch, but I do know that there are many tools out there, and XCM is an organizational-wide workflow solution for you to manage all of the work and all the projects that you work on. It's not just, tracking due date lists, but it does incorporate these project management concepts to increase your organization's productivity. So before we get into it, this is our first polling question. So let me bring that up and let me launch that and give you all a minute to answer. So the question, what key business challenges keep you up at night? All right, thank you all for voting. It looks like our #1 answer is ensuring I meet deadlines and can proactively address bottlenecks. Honestly, I'm not surprised if any of these won, but we all have those deadlines that we need to meet, especially for our clients. So we get all their work done on time, and there are, they don't meet any penalties, that would cause us to lose them as a client. And we need to address those bottlenecks so we can make sure all of the work that's in our supply chain can get out the door done on time. Again, we'll be touching upon within this presentation how one way to improve your project management is to use a technology. We'll get into people process technology, but one way to address these is absolutely using a technology. Again, XCM is one of them. There are a few out there, but you want a way to make sure that you can see all your work leading up to deadlines, and you can see where there are bottlenecks to level that work out across your staff to make sure you can get it out the door on time without making everybody work crazy extra hours. And then what good is that when you're going to lose half your staff due to burnout the following year? So huge things that those challenges absolutely come up again and again when we talk with our colleagues today. All right, so why should we invest in project management and look at project management? So first, let's define project management. Project management is the practice of initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing the work of a team to achieve specific goals and meet specific success criteria at the specified time. The primary challenge of project management is to achieve all of the project goals within the given constraints. So if we think about the goal of project management, deliver all of our work with our given time and our given resources while achieving our quality that we need to deliver to our clients. There are simple truths here that of the challenges that we all face today. Again, when we're talking to our colleagues out there, these are the 8 items that we continually hear as challenges today, that we face today. In 2018, nearly 70% of projects met their original goals or business intent, while nearly 60% were completed within the original budget. That information, again, is coming from the PMI. But what that tells us is that there is a lot of risks in our project work. There are a lot of challenges in delivering the value that we were intended to value within the given time and budgets that we were allocated. So we should be looking at everything we can to invest in our project management. These projects do not happen in a vacuum. So let's touch upon these challenges quickly, highlight some. I'm sure you're all well aware of these challenges already, but we can quickly go through, what is posing a challenge to us delivering our projects on budget and on time. We have high pressure deadlines, whether it's quarterly earnings, financial compliance, tax compliance, forecast, budget, internal deadlines, or even just the crisis of the day, when someone comes in the office and says, drop what you're doing, or I should say, hops on a Zoom call and calls you and says, stop what you're doing. There's always, that high pressure deadline of something that you need to get done. We have Challenges in the handoffs today. There are a ton of manual handoffs in any business. These can vary in different ways and create inefficiencies. Take email. It all drives us insane with the amount of emails we get every day. We can lose significant information or data within these email exchanges. I know my email inbox, I'm try to be one of the good ones that doesn't have 1,000 unread emails, but it's very easy for people to get behind on their emails, and very important information definitely can get lost in people's inboxes. There's tons of interdependencies today, whether it's third parties outside of the organization that we interface with or exchange work with, or it can be internal departments that we interface with. Other business unit leaders are always coming to finance, tax, accounting, and asking questions to ensure projects are on track. There's a lack of visibility. If we're going to drive business process success, first you're going to need visibility into what's happening today. I think you all highlighted that on that polling questions. You need to be able to look at those bottlenecks and have visibility into those bottlenecks to make sure you're meeting all of your deadlines. So you can't improve something unless you have visibility into what's happening to be able to make those strategic decisions to improve your processes. We all know about work compression. I'm sure this is true for all of us on this call. Tax, accounting, finance departments typically don't have an unlimited budget. So it's doing the same amount of work with the same or fewer resources. If I'm a controller, I want info faster so I can get the work to the right people at the right time. And again, you need visibility into those bottlenecks to get it to the right people at the right time. There are tons of competing priorities out there today. Our departments all have various needs. How do things get prioritized? We know we need to close the books. We know we have statutory requirements, but how do we prioritize all the other requests coming in? Again, plenty of tools out there. Not everything can be priority number one. You have to prioritize the work across all your staff, across all your departments, and align you all to make sure that the most valuable work to your organization is getting completed and done on time in the correct order. Again, tools out there. Manual processes. We are all manually preparing for meetings, giving status updates to give strategic insights back to the business. These can take days or weeks to compile, and then the data can already be out of date. Again, tools out there to get you that information a lot easier, a lot faster, and it will be up to date when you actually have meetings. Point solutions. There can be upwards to 100 point solutions we leverage today to get our work done. Who's sitting there and looking overall at the process of how you're connecting and leveraging these solutions for the most effective process? Project managers will help ensure that projects deliver successful results among these challenges. And then we have here a quote that really resonates with me. We are also busy with email and meetings. When do we get time to do our real work? One of the points I'll be touching upon today is to hire PMPs to be able to focus on ensuring the success of projects and ensuring staff can use their time to focus on high-value work. Even without hiring dedicated project managers, learning these methodologies and techniques will make you more effective at project management. Then you will have more time to focus on the more high value client work or internal projects that you're working on. So again, why project management? Well, there are some very real costs to ineffective project management. It's easy to see the costs of projects and failed projects, but there are also deeper hidden costs of mismanaged projects. There's hidden costs and project costs, opportunity costs, and resource costs. So, here's this one is pretty in your face. Projects can cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Think about software implementations. Hugely expensive for projects to not deliver the value they were initiated to provide. Projects can go over budget and get so behind that they're killed altogether. And then you have all of those sunk costs in license costs and training and implementation costs. Project management practices are there to ensure success. Again, we look at that software implementations, those costs of the licenses and the cost to implement are hugely expensive at companies across industries. Typically, what we're seeing is someone who is young, tech-focused individuals typically is handed a software implementation, and then they become the go-to person who will implement software moving forward. To get formal training for those resources, some bigger companies, you do have dedicated departments focused on that, but a lot of smaller companies do not. So if you see yourself and you do have that resource that has kind of been fallen into that role, getting them formal training will absolutely help ensure project success, and that is huge value for your organization. There's also an opportunity cost. How do you know you are working on the correct projects? Working on one project blocks you from working on other projects. It can cost your business money and market share if you invest in the wrong projects. The PMI outlines tools and techniques to ensure your organization is initiating the most impactful projects from a strategic standpoint. If you think about it, people who work in finance and wealth management, when you just think of investing today, do you always want high risk investments, or do you want, a lot of variety within your portfolio? If you think about the projects that your organization is working on today, are those always the large, complex, long-term, high-value projects? You kind of got to balance it with, simpler, short-term projects that can bring you value as well. So again, there are ways to look across the projects available for you to work on and help you choose the best blend of projects to bring your organization and your clients the most value. And then there is the resource cost. Let staff focus on using their expertise. And again, let PMPs focus on project management. We talked about the business roadblock, so you want to ensure that your staff can focus on higher value work instead of managing the projects as well. Staff satisfaction, when they utilize their time effectively and the value perceived of their work, is huge for retention. You may not always have the luxury of hiring project managers, but the PMBOK, the project management body of knowledge, will give you the formal training to more effectively manage projects. All right, so we talked about, why we need project management, the challenges, the costs, and let's just look at the landscape of a tax project. just an example of this big process here. And again, I'm sure a lot of us can relate to this very streamlined process in our organizations today. You know, do you always get, if we kind of look at this flow here, do you always get all of the information to work on this project in a timely manner? Do you have to continually go back to the client? You know, how many times does a return bounce between a preparer and reviewers going over questions and review points? How many times does a return go to a partner that is perfect, you know, or are there additional questions for the preparer once the partner reviews it? You know, do the admins know exactly how to assemble that return on the back end and how to ship it? Or are they sometimes having to call you, email you, and look for you in the office today with questions on how this should be assembled and delivered to your client? You know, once the return is e-filed, do all the stakeholders in the organization, do they easily know the status of the e-file? How long does it take before they understand it was rejected and needs to be redone and moved to back to one of the preparers? You know, there are so many, we're all focusing on streamlining this today. I'm sure your organizations have made significant investments in softwares to help parts of this process. But, you know, do you have somebody to sit there and look over, you know, all the different technologies you're leveraging, all the manual processes that are happening within this from a high level to make sure you can streamline this as much as possible? And again, project managers will have that training, formal training, to help you do so, or help you do it and bring that value to your organization, and hopefully it will help your career development in that case. All right, this brings us to our second polling question. In your role, what would you recommend to improve your business? All right, I'm going to give you just a few more seconds here. All right, thank you all for answering. Our number one choice here was more effectively assign work across staff. This is huge. This is one that we work with our colleagues on in how to solve this pain point. You know, in the nature of the work, if you think of tax work versus financial work, you know, tax work is smaller projects, higher volume. You can't predict when they're going to happen like you can more predict on the financial side. But you need to plan for both. So you need to see, you know, who to level your work across your resources. Huge for staff satisfaction. Huge to retain your staff from that satisfaction, and huge so you can make sure that you can get all your work done on time. Again, we have solutions out there. There are solutions out there. We have a pretty unique one for that tax use case, but again, Absolutely, there should be tools out there that help you do this to ensure that those bottlenecks are no longer an issue in getting all your work done. All right, so we looked at the challenges, why project management. Now let's look for some focus areas for improved project management. So here are some more stats from our industry that are suggesting what areas we can focus on to improve our project management. Greater than 50% of tax material weaknesses reported in the United States are driven by a lack of review, lack of personnel, or poor process execution. 75% cited insufficient resources to cover tax function activities. 57% cited a lack of process or technology. 64% cited insufficient internal communication. From those numbers, therefore effective project management comes down to people, process, and technology. People with the right training and the right skill sets, a process that captures the right data at the right time, and the right technology to make this all happen. So let's take a look at what are some things we can do in each of these areas. So when we look at people, we can hire or we can train them. Just remember, hiring resources that can fully focus on project management will help reduce risks of ineffective project management, as they can fully utilize their time to focus on project logistics and clearing blockers and challenges that may arise. So now let's look at process. I always, you wanna standardize your processes, right? If you standardize those processes, you're assuring everyone is aligned on what is expected of the project manager and how they should manage their projects. A standard process will allow project data to be analyzed across projects for process improvement. If everybody's managing their projects differently, it's almost like you're comparing apples and oranges on the lessons learned to look for trends of how to improve your processes. So again, you need to have at a baseline, everyone working in the same way, so you can see the trends and the challenges and the areas that you can focus on to improve your processes. And again, the last one here, focusing on a standard process will allow you to easily reassign project managers, and they can pick up where the other project manager left off. Think about your work you're providing your clients as well. If you standardize how you do the work, what documentation is stored where, what's expected of each of your resources. Well, if somebody is out sick or wins the lottery and goes on an extended vacation, it's easy to reassign that work out to a new resource, and they don't have to figure out where everything is and what happened. And finally, that leveraging technology. Cloud applications are necessary today. They act as project information radiators to all the stakeholders that require different levels of knowledge about your work. It allows planning project schedules and seeing, where those bottlenecks are for your resources of the work, and help you, level that work across your staff so it can get more effectively out the door. It helps deal with change and rescheduling. Think about how many times the scheduler's life where they need to constantly move around work. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle. When they find out, the client isn't ready for you to come on site, they haven't given you the information, or, something just comes up where a project needs to be rescheduled, and then there's a whole cascading effect on rescheduling resources on other projects. You need to keep the project team on track during project execution to know when and what they should be working on to keep the schedule on time. So many, many benefits out there to leveraging technologies out there today. And then we have this quote from Bill Sheridan, on the risk of not investing. We spend too much time worrying about ROI and not nearly enough time focused on what Reggie Henry, the tech guru at the American Society of Associate Executives, calls RONI, the risk of not investing. The key point here is that if you take no action, nothing will change, but your competitors will take action and outpace you. If they outpace you in delivering value to the market, then you are at the risk of losing market share. So again, invest now for future effectiveness and success. All right, this brings us to our third polling question. How do you move projects through your business today? So let me give you all a minute to answer that now. All right, just a few more seconds here. All right, so number one answer, all of the above. I love it. I expect that we all have these challenges today. Meetings, emails, phone calls, paper files, workflow, BPA software, all of the above. Again, it's the more you can store in one place, the less chance there is that something gets missed. So again, you need that one source of truth that everybody has access to see to help keep these projects moving through your businesses effectively. And that is typically everybody saying all the above. It's easy to get to look at the madness going on, think it's all beautiful on the other side, but common thing we're absolutely seeing today, where everyone's using all the tools available to them to help move their projects. And again, trick is to have somebody focus on how you can streamline all of that work into one source of truth. So now let's get into some of the methodology specific to the PMBOK. Again, the PMBOK is the Project Management Body of Knowledge written by the PMI. So the PMBOK breaks up project management into 10 different areas. The first area is integration. This knowledge area contains the tasks that hold the overall project together and integrate it into a unified whole. Including is why the organization wants to initiate the project and how it integrates with the organization's strategy. It aligns everyone on the project's target goal of what value it was initiated to bring. I love understanding when people, define why was this project initiated to begin with. So many times we're working on something and there are challenges and we need to make decisions on how to deal with those challenges. And sometimes those decisions seem so hard to make. Which way should we go, left or right? And, if you have it documented on what the original intent of the project was, sometimes just remembering asking yourself that one question, well, why did we decide to work on this to begin with? It really can make those questions, a lot easier to answer. You have scope. This knowledge area involves the project scope, that is the work that is to be included within the project. This is huge for scope creep. When you realize, you have to define the scope of a project. If you don't clearly define what will be done and included in the project, and it's also helpful to document and have people sign off on what is not going to be part of the project. If you do not have that defined, it is very easier for stakeholders that have a lot of influence to start adding work to the project that was never intended to be a part of that project. And unless you have that scope clearly defined, it is very, very hard to negotiate for that work to not be included. Sometimes it must be included, but then if it does, that is a change of scope. So if you're going to change the scope, you can maybe negotiate on a longer timeline or more resources. So again, those negotiations, it's very hard to have those negotiations effectively if the scope was never clearly defined in the first place. You got the next area is time management, schedule management. During planning, the project manager must divide the project into the tasks and create both a schedule and a budget for each task. This helps ensure you can meet your deadlines. Again, think about, think about an audit. You have, or an internal audit, I should say. You have all these different areas that you need to audit on some basis. And then you have all the different processes within those different areas, and you can't audit everything. You just don't have enough time. So it would be valuable for yourself to, again, break that project work down and see from the bottom up, what actually is the timeline if you're given this project an internal audit to work on for one area. If you were to do all the work looking at your resources and map it out, can you meet the time frame you were given? Just because you were given that timeline, doesn't mean, and it's not feasible, doesn't mean you cannot bring that up. You should bring that up. People are a lot better at dealing with that at the front end rather than getting a big surprise at the back end that there's no way you can do this project on time. You can work with them to negotiate, if possible, what can be changed. You can add time, resources, you can reduce scope, many different ways, but you do need to do that upfront work to make sure you haven't signed on to a project that is impossible to be successful in. That will always come back to you. There's cost. There's techniques to deal with unforeseen issues and still deliver your projects on budget. There's the PMBOK includes techniques on how you create those buffers in your schedule, and how you create those emergency funds in case issues arise during your projects. There's also quality. Is your project successful if the quality of the work is poor? So again, it's huge to understand the quality and making sure we're delivering a quality product. Because if your client is getting work that is not of quality, it is going to be hard to keep them as a client. Procurement, almost all of our projects have some sort of outside procurement. This is where you make those build, buy, or partner decisions. Human resources, again, this is an easy one to bring yourself a lot of benefits to your projects that you work on. Absolutely look at the type of work this project requires. Look at the resources available, and when you go to work on a project, make sure you are requesting the resources with the skills you need to deliver for the particular project you're working on. People can always say no, but again, that can become a point of negotiation. Well, if I'm not given the, I'm sure nobody has an A and a B team, but some people think of it that way. If I can't get the A team and I'm getting the B team, well, what does that do with my project timelines? Communication. It is essential to develop a communications plan to keep all stakeholders in the loop throughout the project, and communicate early and often when unexpected issues occur. You need to understand all the different stakeholders, how often and what information do they want to receive. If you can lay that out and make sure that you're giving the stakeholders what they want, they will be extremely happy with the keeping them up to date on project progression. Risk management, huge again. Major risks are very seldom identified up front, but when they are, project stakeholders tend to forgive the unexpected issues much quicker. There will always be issues. Again, identify them up front. The ones that are very risky, you can actually assign out to team members to keep an eye on them if the risk does become an issue. And also, again, doing your due diligence, putting together that risk management plan. If an unexpected issue does come up, then at least your stakeholders will understand that you did as much planning as you could to avoid these risks, but something can unexpectedly happen. I mean, this year with COVID-19, another example. Stakeholder management, there's nothing more important than your project stakeholders. You could, in theory, declare a project a success if the stakeholders are satisfied, but the project was a disaster. But again, obviously, we would not recommend working in that manner. That is a very low likely of success if you work in that way. The PMBOK then breaks down the process groups. A lot of people think of these as phases, but they're not really phases, because each of these process groups happens throughout the life of a project. Project initiation, this is where you're creating a business case. Organizations can fund projects that align to the organization's strategy. And everyone, again, in this is understanding why the project was funded and what are the intended results and value that the project should be delivering. Project planning, again, this is where you're defining the scopes, aligning stakeholders on what the project will and will not deliver, agree on what the success criteria is, A lot of times people don't define how do they know if they're successful, what's expected of them to know, what is the target look like so I can ensure that I'm hitting it. Create that schedule, plan the deliverables, plan in phases if possible. If you can break up your project into smaller pieces that you're delivering, so you don't need to wait to the end of the project to deliver all the value. Maybe you can break it up and start delivering value as the project progresses. That is a great tool to use for some projects that all the stakeholders may not have been thrilled that project was selected. If you can start giving them early value earlier on, it's more likely to gain that momentum for that project. And again, here's where you're planning those risks and you're getting the buy-in from those stakeholders. The third group here is project execution. Here is when you're actually doing the work and you're making sure that your staff are doing the work properly. You're tracking your milestones and you're communicating project updates. The fourth, monitoring, controlling. You're tracking the progress, monitoring the status, controlling the quality, reviewing project deliverables, and most importantly, you're managing the change and communicating across the teams. You may have contingency plans. If this risk turns into an issue, we're going to go right instead of left. And you need to communicate, the new direction if you are to make one of those decisions. Again, projects, constant changes. You think about building a house, you come up with the blueprints, everything looks great, you hand it off and they start building, the framing and everything. And so many times you need to go to the project site just to keep track of what is happening to assure that it's still going to meet your needs. It can look great on paper, but when you're actually there and seeing that somebody made a mistake, we're all human, or something that looked great in the paper, when you actually see it physically, it just doesn't look right. So you're always going to be there working in your projects and monitoring the changes and issues. And then communicating them to the internal team and to the stakeholders on what's happening. And finally, project closure. I love lessons learned. Document what worked well, what did not work well, to improve project management process on future projects. This can become a resource for project managers to review when they're planning to work on similar projects in the futures. Even successful projects, everyone loves a celebration, the celebration at the end of tax season, when you guys got all the work you needed to by that deadline for your clients. But it is so valuable to have that lessons learned, to sit down and say, great, we celebrate our success, but for us to do this all over again next year, what could we do better? And again, huge to share those success stories internally, huge for staff satisfaction. And again, technology for your methodology. So now you have resources to manage the projects and the process. Now look to implement a technology to plan, manage, and communicate project status. All of these solutions have project management best practices built into their design. So again, many tools out there, but absolutely leverage tools to help you with your processes. And then quickly, let's just go over some things to remember before we get into the questions. Project managers are there, ensure projects are successful and deliver on scope or value. on budget, and on time. Project management process, standardized project management process will ensure the best project management practices are followed for successful project outcomes and can continually be improved. Identify those optimal processes, follow them consistently, embrace continuous improvement, and ensure nothing slips through the cracks. Technology will ensure project team members know the work they are responsible for completing, allow project managers to keep the project on scope, on budget, on time, and give stakeholders visibility on project status. So use those technologies, leverage them to ensure the project team knows what they're responsible for and when, allow project managers to keep the project meeting your restraints and give stakeholders the peace of mind and visibility that projects are progressing as they should. All right, so thank you all. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. Please enter any questions you may have, and I will be happy to answer them.
Great, thanks, Mike. We do have a couple of questions out here, so let me go ahead and read the first one for you. What technology do you recommend for successfully managing projects?
Again, the technology that I work in every day and am most familiar with is obviously XCM, being a company-wide solutions and all the work needed to deliver a project that can be monitored and controlled in a single source. This gives you, that visibility, reducing your risks in those interdependencies and those handoffs, all those challenges we reviewed. So again, I would say XCM does allow you to manage the whole project from planning through delivery.
Great, thanks, Mike. Another one is, can you provide specific examples of the importance of project management for a tax department?
So examples of the importance of project management. So, we looked at that high-level diagram of a tax project. You have all those blockers potentially that can block you from moving that work forward. You have, client documents missing. You have all those questions that your preparer may need resolved to help them move the project forward and get that prep done. You have all those questions that the reviewer has and the partner, and then it finally gets to the professional, the support staff team to help deliver it to the client, and they have a bunch of questions to get it, assembled and out the door. So that, diagramming it out, going through that whole processes, identifying what solutions you're using to cover the challenges of each of those steps. That is where a project manager can, come in at a high level, document that whole project and who's entering what and what application and how they're leveraging that. Are you using that application the most effectively? You should be reviewing all of that year over year to really get the most out of all the investments you've made in your technology and your processes. So again, I attribute that all back to these project management concepts.
Okay. How does practice management increase profitability for corporate finance, tax, and accounting departments?
So we have a number that we always point to, but according to the CIO, departments that use proven project management practices waste, and their number, 28 times less money than their haphazard counterparts. So basically, corporate finance and tax and accounting departments are then able to reinvest those savings into other areas, allowing them to deliver more projects with the same resources. So again, huge to focus on project management and leverage your people, your processing, your technology to make sure that you have these successful project outcomes that, again, you can then use to reinvest into other projects or other areas.
Great. We do have a question regarding XCM and CCH changing. Will XCM be replaced by or replace workstream? So this goes back to the technology, the first question. It's sort of a follow-up to that.
Yeah, so that is, I would not know that, so you would can reach out to your client service representative to get some more information on that.
And then we have one more question. Just asking if there's going to be a PDF. So yes, this session has been recorded and the PowerPoint will be PDF'd and will be available on our help center for anyone to view and look at. So with that, Mike, I don't see any other questions coming in. So thank you for your time today to walk everybody through this. And thank you all for joining us in this series with Mike. If you do come up with any questions after this session, please feel free to reach out to XCM Client Services at xcmsolutions.com. And we will be happy to answer any questions or potentially put you in touch with maybe Mike if we can't answer them for you. And with that, we are going to close out this session. So thanks everybody for joining and have a great day.